Everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Ahsoka Part 6, Far, Far Away. Now this episode, of course, was another amazing episode. We got 2 more to go. Of course, with all the Night Sister stuff, I had to just bust out the Jedi Survivor games. Or I guess they would just be the Jedi games. I always say Jedi Survivor because of the last game coming out. Also, very sad news for anyone who did not know. The lead game director or something like that left EA, who is like the director of these games. So I'm a little worried. A lot of people are fairly worried about what that means for the next game. Hopefully they get someone in that is good enough to, replace the guy that left. But yeah, that was not my favorite news of the week, where it's like, oh, good time to be a Star Wars fan as far as I'm concerned. And it's like, ooh, I don't like that news. So we'll see what happens when the next, Jedi game comes out. But I'm hoping it's great because I love these games. And of course, the reason I busted them out, Night Sisters. Great episode. Far, Far Away was really good. Of course, we're just going to go from beginning to end because we do have our small snippet in the beginning of this episode where we do actually have Ahsoka and Huyang as they're going through. Of course, the big joke as of now is like, what's the joke about, what's going on with the story of the galaxy, or the story of the worlds, volumes 1, 2, and 3. And it's like, oh, the first one's the best. But it's like, well, is that first one the prequel, or first one is the first ones that came out? So no one actually knows, but everyone can say whatever they want. So I thought that was really funny. But I definitely like that moment. And then of course, Huyang being like, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Then we have Sabine's episode. So Ahsoka, obviously, last week's episode was all her, and it was great. It was a fantastic episode. And then we go into this one and it's like, all right, we're getting a new galaxy. Of course, it ended up being, and I think I said this in my last review, it was like, as soon as they got there, I was like, yeah, it looks like space. They got to a planet. It's like, yeah, it looks like an alien planet. It's a, desert planet. Obviously, it's the story around the world. First off, the fact that the ring around the planet were the bones of Purgle that go there to die. And it's, I think Paradiso is the name of the place. And it's like, oh, it's basically, a paradise, and that's the graveyard. Paradise is just the ending for them. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Also, this is the ancestral origin of Night Sisters, because apparently they were not originally from Dathomir. They basically inhabited and really took over Dathomir, but they come from this other galaxy. And I was like, okay, that's very interesting. They reference how it's like, oh, well, they have a bunch of cargo and it's going to take them 3 days to do it. Huge question, because there's always something where, I've watched reviews and people will be like, this thing didn't make sense, that thing doesn't make sense. Why did they wait to do that? The whole point of what they were doing was she's going to come here, she's going to find me, which means she's going to find you guys. And then once I'm found by my general, or, whatever level command Morgan is in, once that happens, we'll load up the ship and then we'll shoot off. And it's like, okay, so it takes 3 days to do that. But what the F was he doing the whole time? He was clearly there. When they landed there, you can say an hour or so passed, and that's when, the Star Destroyer came in. And it's just like, okay, so why'd they wait to do that? All that time, if that was their plan, why did they wait to do that? I know that was their agreement or whatever. And I was like, so if he wasn't found, I guess they didn't trust him enough to put the bodies on the ship, because they were like, oh, well, he might take the bodies, or whatever. But I don't know if that made a lot of sense. And as everyone has said, the troopers that I almost said Kanan, oh my goodness, the troopers that Thrawn excuse me. I have a cold too. But the troopers that Thrawn had, they're called night troopers. So everyone assumes that they're dead, and they were brought back by the Night Sisters, which would explain why they all have the red bandages and stuff on them, to represent that they're, they follow Thrawn, but they're owned by the Night Sisters. That's what, the red signifies. I would assume, if all of us are correct, those are definitely people just like Marok, who everyone's like, well, what's his deal? Who is he? Is he Dark Ezra and all this crap? And then he was just a puff of smoke. And then it's like, okay, we've seen that happen. And then they, they already had that reference where everyone wonders what the F is going on with that character. And obviously for giant nerds like me, we know that that's Night Sister magic. Then you have these characters come in, and it's like, okay, so all these troopers have been living with this dude, and they've been gone for over a decade, and they've just been surviving on this planet. And it's like, but they're all probably just dead soldiers. And that's probably the actual truth behind it. So I thought that was super cool. I love the fact that he's in his costume, and it's, for the most part, still good, but you can see it's tattered and stuff because he didn't get it actually replaced. So I thought that was kind of cool the way they did it. It was here's his actual costume, but you can see it's scruffed up. It's got some parts where it's a little messed up, and I was like, I like that they handled it that way. But I absolutely love the design of the characters, where it's troopers and it was like white, gold, red. Some of them had like, I think there was like one that had like a black mask, which was odd because he was like the only one that had a black mask, but he wasn't special. And then obviously, I think Enoch was the character that actually spoke to Sabine, and he had like the gold Roman mask. So I thought it was really interesting that amongst all the troopers, there were only two that had different masks, but only one of them was actually important. I was like, oh, that's so weird that they gave that one guy like a dark face mask, but he's just like one. He literally, unless I missed it, which is totally possible amongst the bunch of, you know, most likely CG troopers they had there. But I was like, that seems so odd, especially because he was definitely up front, like as Thrawn was walking forward. I was like, oh, there's a guy who has like black, like his face mask is black, but didn't have any actual importance or anything like that. So I just thought that was interesting because there were only two troopers that had different faceplates, and it was the one with the black and then Enoch who actually had the gold. So I thought that was interesting. Love Enoch's outfit. I'm sure Hot Toys is like, yes, more money, because they're gonna be making these new night troopers and everybody's gonna be all over that because it looks sick. But I love the design. I thought they looked super cool. I thought the ship was awesome, where you can see that it's really messed up, so a bunch of it is like done in gold because those are like the scraps that they had. Thought all of that was super cool. And then of course Thrawn comes in. He's blue, he's got the crazy red eyes, and he, you know, it's the actual voice actor from Rebels, but he's the same character. He's like, all right, finally it's happened. He even came out with a quote. Excuse me. Forgot what the quote was, but the first thing he did was like, let me walk down this super long path, all my troopers are together, and then I'm gonna step off this thing, and then I'm gonna drop a quote, be like, and that's what he did. He came out and was like, yay us. And that's basically what he did. And that's kind of what he does in general. So I love the introduction of Thrawn in the show. I was glad that we actually got him, because I know a lot of people, even before the show started, everybody was like, well, how much Thrawn do we get? Is it going to be they find him in the last episode and him on the Eye of Sion, which is like the only clip of him we actually have in the trailer is him already on the Eye of Sion, which I assume is going to be in the finale of him actually going back to, you know, the original galaxy. So that's the only clip that we got. You know, it may have been something else in there, but I was like, all right, we got 3 episodes of Thrawn now, and also 3 episodes of Ezra. Less so on the Ezra front, because of course it was more towards the end and it was just like the reunion, but that was super cool too, because I was like, man, are they really going to do both characters in the same episode? And I was super happy that they did. So we got Ezra towards the end, but getting Thrawn was super cool. Seeing his night troopers was definitely sweet. Of course, more Star Wars lore. It's like, hey, this is where the ancestors are from. The coffins most likely being Night Sisters, and Night Sisters being all about necromancy. They even referenced the fact that characters dying, because they're like, oh, Balin said Ahsoka died. And it was like, yeah, but Jedis die all the time, and so do Night Sisters. That's like their whole thing, is like, you know, this person's dead. Oh, look at that, they're back alive. Like, that's the whole thing amongst Jedi and Night Sisters. And Night Sisters, it's really about that, where everything's necromancy. So I was super happy that they talked about all of that stuff. And those are probably Night Sister bodies that they're, for whatever reason, just now loading up. I mean, that's all I can think of, is like, they had an agreement, and I know it didn't come to fruition, but I guess it was just like that thing, like they can kind of see the future though, so it didn't, like, that's my question of the episode. I know a lot of people said, well, how come he didn't find Ezra beforehand when Sabine found him in like 2.5 hours? Very valid as well, but I was like, why didn't they load up? They've been here for like 10 years. They didn't trust each other enough to just do like the prerequisite thing and be like, all right, well, once they eventually get here, we can just, you know, they're here, boom, we're out of here, we already loaded up the ship. 3 days worth of stuff. They should have done that a long time ago, but they didn't. So it is what it is. Also, Sabine, of course, goes out, finds Ezra, just like that. It is what it is. That's all I can say about that, because they had, even if they are night troopers, they have the numbers. If they literally just sent 2 people out, like, it didn't seem like she traveled that far. It wasn't like they did it where the episode took an entire day or anything like that, where like it took the span of an entire day for Sabine to leave the ship. She had to, like, you know, set up camp for the night or whatever, and then she found like the turtle characters the next day, and then excuse me, then she finds Ezra at the end of the episode. It was the same day. It was within a couple of hours, admittedly. It really was. And if it was kind of what I thought was going to be the case, which was just Ezra and then Thrawn, really, excuse me, when I thought it was just going to be the 2 of those characters, then I was like, okay, it definitely makes sense. But then his introduction was like, oh, he has a buttload of stormtroopers, but they never found Ezra. So it was super weird. Even if it was based on magic, maybe they'll like reveal something they can't go super far, which won't make sense, because of course the troopers are going to go there where they follow Balin and Shin. So it's like, I don't know where the logic is. Like, there's definitely things in here where I'm like, I gotta question it. Like, it's unfortunate because I love the episode, but 100%, why didn't they load things up faster? Or just in the decade that they had, why didn't they load up? Clearly they trusted each other enough over the course of 10 years, or just about. Why didn't they load the ship up ahead of time? And how in the world did they never find Ezra? And he's really not that far away. Like, I know he doesn't really care. That was kind of the whole thing where it was like, he doesn't really care to do it. But at the same time, it's like, well, you still probably could have if you wanted to. So I don't really know. I realized my seat, I hate this thing. I got to get a new chair. It's like slowly going down. But I don't know. Those are the two things for sure, where it's just like they didn't load up the ship and somehow he didn't find Ezra in all of that time. But I still absolutely love the episode. We did get a cool action sequence with Sabine where she shows her Mandalorian side of things. I thought that was super cool. Using the whip and actually like tasing the dude, I thought that was actually pretty cool, because I don't think I remember them really doing that in the show, where specifically in Rebels, where hers actually had like a taser. Also in the show, and this I think is something that they had quite a few times, but they had like orange lasers pretty much that would, like, you know, shoot out, and so they definitely got rid of that. But that was the thing for sure, where it was like they would shoot out like an orange wire, and it was literally like, it looked like a laser wire, so it makes sense why they got rid of that. But I was like, I definitely remember that from Rebels, and I always thought that was interesting because it just looked so weird when it could have just been a wire, but just an animation thing. But love that action sequence. She goes through, she uses her Mandalorian side, you know, she's blocking a bunch of blaster bolts, which I thought was super cool. So I like the way they handled that, where, you know, she's going through and blocking and everything, taking people down piece by piece, and then eventually gets down to where she's like, okay, knock my blasters out of my hand, I'm on the ground, time to go lightsaber mode. And then she comes out, she's doing a couple swings and, you know, basically takes everybody out. She doesn't even kill, I think, the last 2 or 3 people, because those are the ones that Baylan and Shin end up meeting and running into, which fantastic design, very samurai-esque. Like, the dude literally had, when they were sitting up there, the person on like the far left even had like 2 axes crossed on their back, and I was like, or 2 hatchets really. I was like, this is sick. I love the design. It's very samurai-esque. So excuse me. I hate being sick. It's also why this review is going to be so late. But I love the design for that. I'm curious how that's going to play out, because she got ambushed and it was about 5 people or so. I would love to see how big that's going to be going into the next episode. Like, are they going to be taking on like 10 extra people plus Baylan and Shin together trying to take down Ezra and Sabine? And I don't really think that the little, you know, crab people are going to do much, but maybe they can fight. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they got a bunch of thermal detonators they made. I have no idea. But I'm curious how big that group is going to end up being, and then what we should expect from that fight, because that's definitely going to be a fight. And also, if they do fight, Baylan's better. Like, I'm just saying, like, no offense to Ezra, and regardless of what like phantom training he was doing by himself, like not actually being in combat or anything like that, just doing the motions, that's if he even has a lightsaber. He could technically have Kanan's lightsaber, because Thrawn took Kanan's lightsaber at the end of Rebels, and I would assume that it's on the actual ship, because I'm pretty sure when they left, that was Thrawn's actual ship, so it would have been somewhere in there. And it's possible that they do that where he actually does end up having Kanan's lightsaber. So I'm excited to see what they end up doing with that. And I think I may have talked about that before in my last review, I don't really remember, but I'm definitely curious if they'll go with that route with it, where it's like, okay, we get into a fight sequence and it's like, all right, Ezra does have a lightsaber. He has Kanan's lightsaber, which would be blue, and that would allow for them to have a, you know, a blue and a green lightsaber as well, going up against the orange lightsabers. And then admittedly, like, the random, you know, fodder, because they're going to kill all the other people. So I'm excited to see how that plays out, because they're probably going to have that battle before whatever madness ends up happening with Ahsoka, because once they come in, you know, the whole thing is like, hey, if Purgle shows up, just blast it, kill it for sure, please. So I'm curious how that's going to play out. Of course, Thrawn being Thrawn, he wants to know who her master is. I'm excited for that. We have not had it, as far as I'm aware at least, because obviously, you know, the Timothy Zahn books are no longer canon. I'm sure somewhere in the comics they've you know, redone it, but Thrawn knows who Darth Vader is. I'm pretty sure he, like, specifically knows that he's Anakin Skywalker. So I don't know how far they're going to go with it. And they already teased that with Baylan. Like, that was his whole thing, was like, oh man, you know, Anakin spoke highly of you. And that was the whole thing. Like, you know, not many people knew what he would become. Like, that must really weigh on you. And that was like the whole thing to get in her head. And that's, excuse me, that's what led to us getting the last episode. So where she has to go through that process of being like, all right, well, you went dark side, I could go dark side. That's crazy. She had to work through that issue. But Thrawn is on like a different level when it comes to that manipulation, but her having gone through that entire process, I'm curious how that'll play out, because it worked on her when it was Baylan, because she hadn't gone through the process of seeing Anakin again and going through the flashbacks. So Thrawn trying to bring that stuff up, I'm very curious how they'll play with that. Like, is he gonna reference Rebels? Because he could. It wouldn't be crazy for him to have known what happened in Rebels season 2. So it's totally possible that he could be like very specific detail. I had a coughing fit there, sorry. But it could be very specific details as it pertains to how he tries to manipulate her, or at the very least get in her head, because he is a capable fighter. That's not really his thing, but he is capable of fighting. I highly doubt they'll do that, because at this point he's supposed to be like in his 50s or something like that. Like, I think he would basically be the actual age of the actor. I know a lot of people were like, oh, he's got a gut and stuff like that. I'm like, the dude's like 60, and I know that that's the thing, for the alien species or whatever, but at the same time, it's like, I don't think he's gonna be doing any physical combat at all in this. That's just obviously a theory. That's just what I'm thinking, but I don't think we're gonna end up seeing the fighting version of Thrawn. You'll have to go to Rebels if you want to see him like doing combat. Like, I just don't think that's really gonna happen. But we'll see. Who knows? I just don't think it's gonna happen. He's gonna be using his words and stuff like that. And like I said, I'm curious how that'll play out, because they probably won't have him and Ahsoka in the same room, because Ahsoka at this point is like, I'm gonna kill a dude, and he ain't gonna put up much of a fight, admittedly. Like, he's good, but he ain't Ahsoka good. Like, he's just not. That's a fact. So I don't think they'll ever end up really being in the same room, unless either, well, it'll have to be Baylan, because if Shin was in the same room, Ahsoka will put her down too. So it would have to be Baylan, or somehow they end up getting either Ezra or Sabine as a prisoner, and they just can't escape for whatever reason. So other than that, they can't really be like face to face. Even if Morgan was in there, they could have a fairly decent battle. But I don't know. We just have to wait and see what ends up happening. I'm very curious how the different levels of the battles are going to take place, especially with it being 2 more episodes. It's like, all right, well, they're probably going to do like the camp battle first with Ezra and Sabine teaming up, and then I would assume Ahsoka is going to get there in the next episode, maybe halfway through, or something like that. Because the fact that this episode started and they were still going through hyperspace, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, it took a couple minutes, because that's how far they were traveling through, throughout space. It was like, it actually was them just kind of sitting there, and we've seen that before. They even did, in The Mandalorian, that was like the whole teaser. It was like, hey, look, I almost called him Baby Yoda. I cannot believe that. But Grogu looked off to the side and he could see the Purrgil as they were going through hyperspace. So we've seen that where they're going an insanely far distance, and so they have to, kind of sit there. But considering how long they had left, where it was like, they specifically mentioned like, hey, Ahsoka, you've been out for like a full day. And then they cut to them, and it's like, they're still doing this. They're like still in hyperspace. So I don't know the actual distance of time and things being relative, all that good stuff. So who knows when Ahsoka will actually show up to them. Like, they know that she's coming now, but I'm like, okay, they left a full day behind. So, like, my main thing is like, is it actually concurrent, or was them getting there basically at the same time as the last episode? Like, if Ahsoka actually gets there, will they now be down by a day? Like, will they have been basically putting all the bodies on the ship for one full day by the time she gets there? It's like, so that's the thing I don't know. I'm like, I don't know if the full day is concurrent with their full day, or if it's like kind of just shown out of order pretty much. So we might get an answer. It might not even matter. Like, once they get there, it'll just be chaos. So it might not make a difference. Excuse me. But I'm definitely excited for what they're going to do. Was very happy to see Ezra, naturally. That dude has insanely blue eyes. Like, literally, when they showed him, his eyes looked like they were lighting up just like Thrawn's eyes. Like, his eyes are like neon red, and I swear this dude naturally has eyes so blue, they look like they were lighting up. I was like, that's weird. It was almost weird. I was like, I've never seen anyone's eyes literally look like they're glowing from a distance. Like, obviously, he has the hair and the beard and everything, and then you just see like his blue eyes are so insanely blue. I'm like, his eyes look like they're lighting up. That is so weird to me. It was insane. But very cool to see that. Obviously, Sabine kind of hit a little bit, like, they have to talk about it naturally. They don't have much time, and she obviously knows that Thrawn's whole thing is like, hey, once our ship leaves, you'll be stranded here forever. So she knows that they have at least somewhat of a timetable. I'm sure once we get the next episode, it'll basically be like, hey, we're eating, and then she has to explain everything. I cannot wait to see his reaction when she says, hey, Kanan has a son. That's like my one thing where I'm just like, I just want to see what Ezra says to that. So I'm very excited for that. But there's also a lot of other stuff like, hey, I found you. You know, how'd you get here? How'd you find me? All those questions don't have the greatest answers because she doesn't know Ahsoka's coming after her. She doesn't know that she talked to the Purgle and was like, all right, you know, we'll hit your ride. She's gonna just like, yeah, it's you and it's me. And then they got like a whole army and then like 4 witches and then like 2 kind of Jedi, but not really Jedi. Like, you know, like I found you, but they're going back and we should try to stop them, but it's just the 2 of us and who knows how that's going to play out. So that's like mentally, that's what she knows. She has no idea about Ahsoka's journey coming to her, any of that stuff. It's just kind of like, yeah, I kind of effed up, but I found you, but I kind of effed up still. So curious how that whole conversation is going to go. There's going to be definitely some highs and lows as far as Ezra's concerned with that. So I'm definitely excited to see how they represent like his emotional turmoil and be like, you found me, but and you know, technically his plan did work. It helped going forward, but then it's like, oh, you found me. And then at this point it worked for like a decade, but now you're almost fully reversing the sacrifice that I made getting trapped out here by literally just trying to find me. And now he has a chance to go back. So I'm excited to see how they handle that. But all in all, another great episode. The visuals, of course, super good. I love like the actual open landscape. It looked like they were actually somewhere. It didn't look like it was volume to me at least, but love the visuals for the episode, especially like the ship actually coming in and it like slowly docking down. It's like, that is such a cool concept. I also thought like that giant spire, I'm like, is it an elevator or is it just stairs? Because either way, that's a long time. Either way, like that spire went so high in the air and I'm like, you can't just, you know, you can't jump down. You just gotta, you either walking down a bunch of stairs or it's just an elevator and it's gonna take a long time. Popped into my head. The thing was so tall and it was just like, how do you go up and down? Like, what's the process there? So random thing that was in my head. Love the episode, love the visuals once again. Excuse me. But once again, I love the story and I'm naturally excited for the last 2. Combat wise, super curious. I want to see Ezra fight. Man, I hate being sick. Want to see Ezra fight. Want to see the conversation where he finds out that Jason exists. I want to see what happens with Ahsoka. I'm sure we're going to get a scene with Hera and the rest of the crew where whatever the New Republic is doing, like we know they F up. The First Order eventually comes along. They F up anyway, but I'm sure we'll get a scene where they eventually get to the planet. It's like, okay, this is what happened. Ahsoka left. This is how things went. Thrawn was here, or well, you know, Thrawn's people were here. They left to go get him. Ahsoka went behind them. So I'm curious how that'll play out. I'm sure I feel like they have to focus on that a little bit because that'll kind of lead into Thrawn's return, just to be like, okay, we know that they had a legitimate plan. They actually left the galaxy to go to another galaxy to get Thrawn, and Hera has to explain all this. Who knows if they bothered to listen? They didn't care when she was like, hey, you know, we kind of have like some decent information, like a giant hyperdrive, like, hey, that's a big deal. But they did not care. They did not care at all. So I'm curious how that'll end up playing out. But as stupid as it is, and I think I mentioned this a couple episodes back, as dumb as it is, it almost fits in line, because it's like, how do you let the Empire or the First Order come back after this whole war? This whole thing was like, the Empire's horrible, the Republic, you know, the rebels beat them and all this stuff, and then you have the New Republic and everything. How does the First Order come in? You see all these dumb moments and it's like, oh, it's so stupid they would do that. But then it's like, yeah, that's a part of the canon. That's the whole point of the canon. So it feels dumb every time we watch it, but it's like, that dumb is what leads to the canon, which you kind of have to balance out. Like, is it a great job that Dave did that because it has to go into the canon, or is it still really annoying because you hate the sequel series and it forces them to do, you know, to show the New Republic as being so stupid? So that's kind of just up in the air. For me personally, they're not going to retcon the sequels. It's just not going to happen. People were like, oh, they're going to do it with the World Between Worlds. I'm like, he's not going to do it. Like, the whole point is that you can't just change everything. So for me, I'm like, hey, if it's dumb in the future, you have to show the little bits and pieces of it being dumb in the past. So I think they're doing a good job. It's unfortunate that that's what they have to do because of what happens in the sequels. But at the same time, it's interesting to watch because I'm like, well, they have to show how stupid these people are. Like, oh yeah, we have Imperials in, you know, every sector and everything. I think that was even in the flashback, or in the recap, I should say, of the beginning of this episode. It was just like, yeah, that's stupid. That's really, really stupid. Like, it was stupid then and it's stupid now. Like, it's just stupid. So we'll see what happens with that going forward, if they bother to listen to Hera. And either way, Thrawn's coming back, so they'll find out soon enough. It doesn't matter what they decide to believe in the next episode, or even if they decide to show that moment in the finale, they will know the truth soon enough, because Thrawn is going to come back. And who the F knows what happens? Ahsoka season 2, Mando season 4, like this stuff, with Dave Filoni's movie coming in, there are so many questions as to when this season ends, what's the very next part of that story? Is it going to be Ahsoka season 2? Because I would assume we're going to have at least 2 seasons of a show. Either it's one more of Ahsoka and then one more of Mando. It definitely won't be one more Boba, but I think we're gonna have at least 2 more seasons, and then that's when the movie hits, and it's everything kind of coming together, and it'll be officially heir to the Empire, dealing with Thrawn, defeating Thrawn, and then he's the establishment for the First Order and all that good stuff. But I'm dying here right now, so I'm in this review. That was everything to talk about anyway. I hate being sick once again. Thanks for checking this out, though. I would love to know your thoughts on this episode, and of course, going into the last 2, what you guys want to see, what you're expecting to see, what you're even hoping to see. At this point, I think it's fair to say, sadly, we won't get Cal Kestis. I don't think we'll even get Marin. Man, if Marin showed up, and Marin's so hot, but I don't think we'll be getting any extra cameos or anything like that in these last 2 episodes, but I'm very excited for them. I know the combat is going to be interesting, not just like visually, but I think story-wise, the combat is going to be very fascinating. Although, I just remember I did skip over one very important thing. I don't know what the F. Balin is doing, but I am super interested, because he's like, this whole planet is like just fantasies as far as I knew as a kid, and then it's like, oh, they're leaving real fast because there's something even more powerful here. We got 2 episodes, and it also makes me worry that they definitely didn't plan to kill this character off, because I thought that from the beginning. I was like, oh, they have 2 characters, naturally the older character is going to die, and then the younger character, who is clearly a bit darker, she's going to fall more on the Sith side of things. But we only got 2 episodes left, and they could totally do it where he finds what it is he's looking for, we get that explanation, and then maybe that thing ends up killing him because he wasn't actually ready to take it on, and whatever. But I am worried that they didn't actually plan to kill his character off now going into these last 2 episodes. Granted, if you're going to kill a character off, you do it towards the very end, and it's like, holy crap, I didn't think they'd actually do it. So it's totally possible, but he's looking for something. His whole thing is like, I want to stop the cycle. Obviously he fails First Order, and then the cyclical nature of things, but I'm curious. I want to know what the F it is. He hears something on this planet, and I can't wait to see what they do with that. We got 2 more episodes. Hopefully they're both insanely long episodes. That's all we can ever hope for, but definitely loving the show. Again, a great episode, great visuals, great story, decent action. It was a shorter action sequence. This definitely wasn't like the action episode, but we got like 1 cool sequence at least. So I think the next 2 episodes are going to have action sequences. I think they're going to do it in both, but definitely looking forward to these last 2. Like I said, we'd love to know what you guys think, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.